In this lesson, we'll learn how to add pockets to our character's denim pants. Alright, fantastic. So this is kind of where we're at this point. We have basically carried those seams up the inside and outside of the legs here. So we're ready to go ahead and begin kind of working around the pelvic area here. Now, obviously, the current texture isn't really going to work, but if I were to come in here and let's just go ahead and right-click and go to Visibility and Show All, you can see that some of these shirt geometries actually hide a lot of these areas. So we may be able to cut some corners and only texture what we can see in those areas, but we definitely are going to need some kind of pockets for these pants to make them believable. So let's go ahead and just, again, right-click Visibility, hide Unselected here, and I'll hit the 6 key to focus in on the front. And I'm going to zoom in here. Now, I've chosen a couple of different pockets here. Now, I've got links in the text file and your project files to the specific files I'm using, but again, you can use any pockets that you want if you find another one online that you like. So, if we look at this first pocket here, it's obviously going to go on this side of the geometry. If we double click on that guy and open it up, you can see kind of what we're looking at here. Now, this particular image actually doesn't match the textures that we're painting, but let me go ahead and show you why. If I were to drag this over, and let me just come up here into my settings, and we'll go ahead and reset the image, and I'm going to scale it up just a bit. Alright, so if I start to paint that in, you'll notice pretty quickly that the denim texture doesn't match the denim that we've already painted. Now, the reason why is because obviously this is a bit more worn. You can see there are areas that are lighter in color that have been rubbed. There's also some dirty areas. So these are some areas that for this particular project, we're going to be doing a lesson later on sort of a dirt pass, and we'll work on sort of matching this level of decay with a couple of different techniques. But for this particular image, I'm not too concerned that it doesn't match. So let's focus instead. I'll just clear the buffer with a Control-Shift-C, and let's focus instead on the position of this. So if I were to come in here and sort of position this here, you can see a little bit of that side seam right there. So we want to make sure and try and get this lined up as closely as we can here. Let's see what that looks like. I'll just come in and paint that in. Now again, this is another reason why I like to have control over the baking, so that once I get this painted into the buffer, I can then start to reposition the geometry underneath it. So if I switch to my paint tool at this point, I can start to kind of position this. Look at this seam right here in relation to the top edge of the geometry. If I Control R, I can rotate a little bit here. So maybe we want to position that right about there. Now, in that position, the seam doesn't quite match up, so we probably would need to use our slurp tool. So we could come over and, again, just like before, slurp that a little bit into position, just like so. And let's take a look over here. We might need to slurp this one down just a bit. Sort of like that. So let's go ahead and bake that down. Now, before I bake this down, here's a trick. This is something that I personally like to do. Anytime I need to mirror this texture that's in my paint buffer over to the other side. So let me show you. I'm going to come over into my projection palette, turn off the, for the bake behavior, let's go ahead and set this over to manual. There we go. So basically, clear only. It means that when I hit the B key, it's going to bake it and clear it. Manual is going to bake it and leave it in my paint buffer. So if I bake it at this point, let me go ahead and undo a couple times. Move that back into position here. There we go. Have some weird display issues going on where the texture is partially visible. So you can see here, basically what I'm looking at here is the paint buffer right here, and then you've seen the baked texture behind it there. So what I can do now is I can come over here, and as long as I'm not zooming in or out, I can start to position this. But right now the paint buffer is flipped, so we need to flip what's in the paint buffer in one of the two axes. So let's come over to the painting palette at this point. There's a paint buffer section right down here, and we can flip in either the U or the V. So let's come down here, and I'll just put a minus sign right here in front of this 1.05. And if I hit enter, you'll see that it flips just like so. So now I can begin to come in and position that in exactly the position I need it for the other side. Slowly kind of nudging it into position here. Feel like I need to rotate a little bit less and go up some. And that's pretty close. Might go over just a bit more. All right, fantastic. So again, we can come in with our slurp tool, kind of slurp things into position if we need to. But that's really pretty close. So let's go ahead and bake that. And we'll Control-Shift-C to clear the buffer, and then 6 to zoom out. And you can see here what we're left with. So that's really pretty good. We've got a little bit of stretching going on right here. But in terms of position, I think that overall it's really pretty good. So let's do this. We'll come in here and kind of observe the sides as well. Now, what I might think about doing here at this point is jumping back over into one of the images that we had, maybe this guy, and just starting to kind of paint a little bit into these areas here to kind of blend this in. Now, I'm not concerned with so much the texture as I am with the details that we're painting. So there's a little bit of the seam that got covered up there. I want to bring that back, sort of like that. And let's go ahead and switch to the paint tool. Let's go ahead and kind of blend this edge right here a little bit. Now, for this, I might switch over to my super soft brush by holding the K key, bringing up my brush pop-up. And I'm going to start to kind of blend that in, just kind of feather at that edge. Might do the same thing up here, that even though this edge really probably isn't going to be seen much, we'll need to move the texture up there. There we go. We'll go ahead and bake that down. And let's go ahead and switch our bake behavior back over to clear only. All right, fantastic. So we can come in, just kind of start to slowly feather this in and blend this together here. All right, fantastic. So with that said, let's go ahead and move to the back pockets, because the back pockets is going to require an additional step based on the image that I've selected. So if I go ahead and hit the 5 key, we'll switch to the back view. And in my image manager, let's go ahead and grab this particular image. Now this image right here is a different color than the other images. This has more greens and yellows in it. It's not near as cool. It's more of a warm blue. So what we need to do here is first go ahead and color correct that image to match these images here. Now to do that, we'll come up to Filters, and I'm just going to choose Hue. It's going to bring up this quite large dialog, but that's okay. I'm going to look at these for a reference over here. And the first thing I'm going to do is set this over to Apply to Selected Images. That means the image that I currently have selected here. So with that image selected, I can come in here and I can start to maybe cool that blue off a little bit by adding some more purples into it. I can also adjust the saturation of that, maybe desaturate it a little bit. I can also come down here and adjust the value. Now, I'm making very, very small changes here, so you might just see me coming in and tweaking just a little bit, especially when it comes to hue and saturation. Well, really all three, hue, saturation, and value. I'm going to go with something a little bit more like that. That to me seems a lot closer to what we have over here than this right here does. So once we hit apply, it's going to make a copy of that image right over here. And now after looking at that, kind of next to these, I still feel like it's a little bit saturated. So we can come in and run the hue filter again. We want to make sure to hit reset all because it won't remember your last settings you used. So I'll come in and desaturate that guy just a bit, hit apply. And there we go. That to me is very, very close. So at this point we could come over here and do sort of the same process. We'll just kind of zoom in. Position this pocket right on his backside. Kind of imagine where that pocket should be. Probably a little bit low. And let's come in, kind of start to paint that in. Might need to come in and turn it to flat shaded so the shadows aren't obstructing our view. I'm actually going to come in here and select my default brush. Make sure I turn off the alpha component for pressure. That way we can get a cleaner, more opaque pocket to bake down. Let's see here. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit, make the pocket a bit larger. We'll go ahead and switch our bake behavior again. Go ahead and bake that down. I'm going to go ahead and flip my paint buffer just like we did before. We'll come back over here, hit a little minus sign right there. There we go. Now we'll need to rotate a little bit with Control R. Just not zooming out. That's the one thing we definitely don't want to do. So let me hit the home key just to free up a little bit more screen space. That seems to be pretty close. Let's go ahead and turn our lighting back on before we bake that. Yep, we're definitely not close. We need to go a little bit further. All right, fantastic. We'll go ahead and bake that down. Let's go ahead and clear my buffer out. Now you can see kind of what we're dealing with. So we've got a little bit of stretching right over here on the outsides of the pockets. So it might be a good idea to go ahead and think about reprojecting that. Let's just go ahead and maybe orbit around just a bit. See if we can bake that down. That's a little bit better. And the position seems to be pretty dead on in terms of both of those two pockets. So at this point, I'm pretty happy with the position of the pockets, but you know, there's some other details that we need to work on here in terms of kind of making these pants a little bit more believable. So in the next lesson, we're going to move forward and we're going to look at some additional details for both the pants as well as the shirt that we can add just to increase the level of buy-in that people who see them are going to have.